May I have your attention? May I have your attention, please? We shall go on with the last resolution of the day. Should be Foreign Affairs 2. We haven't received any textual changes, so who from the committee may I call to read out the operating clauses? France.
Thank you, Mr. President. Resolution on the question of the creation of the European Foreign Service. Smaller member states are increasingly concerned about the future role in the Union's foreign policy. How can their interests in this respect be safeguarded? The Model European Parliament, 1. Reminds that the EEAS and its delegates must always work in the general interest of the EU. 2. Authorizes the EEAS to serve in an advisory role concerning all European foreign policy. 3. Urges improved coordination between the EEAS and the European Council. 4. Encourages the concept of building EU embassies abroad in order to ensure the global representation of all member states and the EU as a whole. 5. Proclaims the establishment of a meeting of the European Council before attending global conferences to A. Declare common guidelines affirming the unity of the EU. B. Issue these guidelines to the European Commission, which represents the EU on global conferences. C. Encourage states that are represented individually to follow these suggestions. 6. Authorizes the EU's Foreign Service to create a rotation system concerning the different roles within the departments of the EEAS. 7. Further recommends holding conferences among diplomats of the member states in order to share their experience and knowledge and therefore raise the overall European standard. 8. Congratulates the EEAS in its efforts to support the provision of development aid and trusts that it will continue to become a core responsibility of the EEAS. 9. Expresses its sincere hope that smaller member states will be more involved in the EU's foreign development aid policy. 10. Calls upon the EEAS to apply the European Neighbourhood Policy Framework when interacting with the EU's neighbours. 11. Instructs the President to forward the resolution to the European Parliament, the European Commission, and the Council of Ministers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who may I call from the committee to give the speech in favour of the resolution? Ireland.
Honourable Presidency, distinguished guests, fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen. When the sun rises, it rises on everyone. The resolution which you now hold embodies a bright future for the European Union, a future where the rays of light from our single, unified European voice will penetrate and brighten every corner of this globe. With the implementation of our resolution, smaller member states can stand together with the rest of the European Union, united, strong, and confident of their future role in the EU's foreign policy. The creation of the External Action Service under the Lisbon Treaty reflects the Union's growing importance as a global player. The aim of this resolution is to safeguard smaller member states by reforming the EEAS. Its intention is to improve the links between development and foreign policy, establish cooperation, and combine the EU Commission's technical expertise with the Council's political weight. This resolution enables us to stand together, holding hands with our brothers and sisters, each of us striving towards a brighter future, as a family and as the European Union. Pascal once said, "Justice and power must be brought together, so that what is just may be powerful, and what is powerful may be just." The resolution highlights the importance of justice in our world and how all member states should be fully represented, not just in the European Union, but throughout the world. Improved communication between the European Council and the EEAS will create a platform for Europe and each individual member state, benefiting each EU citizen in the causes of development, peace and stability everywhere. Equal representation and common guidelines before global conferences will enable the interests of smaller states to be broadcast and cared for, that both a guiding hand and a safety net will be provided for all. I invite you to look at the resolution which you now hold. I invite you to feel the change that will take place, a change in equality, a change in justice, and a change of life. By spreading the establishment of EU embassies, the resolution will give a voice to those who are silenced and quietened, and will bring them to the forefront of international relations. It highlights the importance of international cooperation and representation, and will shape the EU's foreign service for the better, creating a unique and efficient European institution. The European Union is a beacon of unity, of virtue and leadership to the rest of the world. It is a lighthouse that guides the troubled ship sailing the seas of injustice to the oceans of equality and justice that are the member states. Our future is uncertain, but if we encompass equality and show a unified front, we can be certain that our future will be a little brighter than if we walked alone. This resolution not only safeguards member states, but each citizen and their neighbour, guiding them individually. Individually we are one drop, together we are an ocean, and together as the European Union we can coexist and share a unified front with our brothers and sisters, both in the Union and throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to factual questions. 64, Hungary.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question regarding the seventh operative clause. Namely, I'm quoting here, further recommends holding conferences among diplomats of member states in order to share their experience and knowledge and therefore raise the overall European standard. I would like to ask, okay, well, basically I haven't said my question yet, but my question would be, what do you mean by European standard? Could a member of the committee perhaps clarify that for me? Thank you.
What do you mean on the European standards? The Netherlands.
Thank you, Mr. President. The European standard is just a way of saying that we want to raise the overall quality of all the European diplomats. So we're raising the bar. We're making them better diplomats in a way.
105, Belgium.
Thank you, Mr. President. In OC1, you said the general interest. Does it mean that the bigger countries still got more to say than the smaller ones?
Can you rephrase the factual question, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. In OC1, you say the general interest. Does this mean that the bigger countries like France got more to say than the smaller ones?
Malta.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that it's clear that general interest means that we want to work for the united Europe. So our first step, the first thing that we have to do is to find out how to help every state of the Europe. Thank you.
Okay, now let's carry on with factual questions. France, 96.
Thank you, Mr. President. In OC8, you're talking about development aid, and my question is this aid only provided to countries that are not part of the EU, or is this aid provided also to European countries?
which countries will be receiving this aid? Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Development aid policy is a policy that the EU has established, and basically it involves development aid to foreign countries.
(116) Bulgaria.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is about the rotation system mentioned in OC6. And in the appendix, it is said that there will be a 4 years rotation, ensuring the opportunity of all member states to serve in a variety of roles within the EEAC. And my question is, does this mean that during this rotation there will be a phase where smaller, less developed countries, part of the European Union, will have more power than larger, more developed countries?
Try to explain, the delegate from Bulgaria, how the system works briefly. Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President. The rotation system will obviously work on the 4-year basis, and yes, it does mean that smaller member states will actually just head a department. They will still involve every single member state, so it does not mean that, say, a country such as Ireland will have total control of European defence. It just means that it will head the department.
Thank you very much. 112, Austria.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question regards OC number 7. How is the exchange of experience and knowledge going to help the small countries to have a voice?
Can you please ask this question at the open debate? We only ask factual questions, definitions, to clarify certain words or other things in the resolution. But next is 42, Lithuania.
Thank you, Mr. President. What are those currently existing institutions mentioned in ICF? Thank you.
Poland.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are talking about the main European institutions, such as the European Council, the European Parliament, and all the main institutions that exist in the European Union. Yeah, the European Commission. Excuse me. Not the European Council.
Thank you very much. 68, Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is also about Clause 7. I was just wondering how often these conferences would take place.
Can you please rephrase the question or speak a bit louder? I do believe that they didn't hear you.
In Clause 7, you recommend holding conferences among diplomats of the member states. I was wondering if anyone could answer how often these conferences would take place.
How often will these conferences take place? How often will these conferences take place? How long is the period until Ireland?
Thank you, Mr. President. We are planning on it being twice a year.
Twice a year. Number 9, the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regarding OC number 6, it states a rotational system concerning the different roles within the departments of the EEAS. Could the committee please elaborate on the different roles, and would there be 27 different roles, or would a number of countries be assigned for each role?
The Netherlands.
No, there won't be 27 roles. Let me just explain how the EES works. It's a very big department. Currently it has over 1,000 people working for the EES. And someone has to lead the departments. And there will be departments like the foreign aid policy, the neighborhood policy, defense, just things concerning the foreign policy.
Thank you very much. Last 5 questions. Number 55, Luxembourg.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is about OC4. And how would you like imagine these EU embassies abroad? Is that one representative is from every country in like a big EU constitution, or how do you imagine like look this like these EU embassies?
Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President. They are planning on building over 130 EU embassies throughout the world. So yes, there are representatives of each EU country in each embassy throughout the world.
Thank you very much. Number 95, Finland.
Mr. President, my question was just asked.
Number 83, Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question regarding ICD. You says that you're striving towards equality between larger and smaller member states. I just want to know whether you approve of larger member states having more influence as they represent more citizens than smaller member states, or?
Can you please rephrase the question?
It says that you're striving towards equality. Does that mean that you do not approve of bigger member states having more influence because of the fact that they have more European citizens?
Bulgaria.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I want to point out that it's not only about how many citizens, it is about how many citizens, but also in the international, in some global conferences, some countries like France, UK, and Germany are represented also individually, like on G8 and G20. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last one, 5, Spain.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm actually from Latvia, but my question is about the point number 8, and I want to ask: do you mean smaller countries as not so powerful and poorer members of the European Union who doesn't have as much influence? Countries such as Romania and Latvia, or only those who have a small area?
Can you please rephrase the question? Make it a bit shorter.
Do you mean by smaller countries, countries who have like this a small impact on European policies, or who just have a small area like Holland?
Who's small?
Netherlands, I mean.
Basically, which country is small? Bulgaria.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we have smaller in our issue also. We can consider smaller and different, in different ways, but like it is here, it's like we are taking, it's official actually, that we're taking Romania as a norm, and its representatives, which are around 33 or 35, I'm not sure. And if there are more than 35 and 33, we are considering the country as big country. If there have less representatives, we are considering the country a small country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Latvia, I do apologize for the mix-up. I won't do it again. The thing is that Spain and Latvia both are situated in the south for me. As there are no amendments, we carry on with the open debate. Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. My question is, how can small countries will have the same voice as bigger countries while they are having problem with helping other countries because of their budget?
Excuse me, points of privilege, Councillor Risen.
Thank you, Mr. President. How can smaller countries will have the same voice as bigger countries while they will have problems with helping other countries because of their budget, which is in OC 8.
Slovak Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. The point is that they don't necessarily have to provide money for these countries. They just, like, there is a pot and many richer countries put money into it, and there can be someone from a smaller country who can, like, aid with this money and decide what to do with the money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 102, Austria.
Mr. President, can I please, I'm not really satisfied. May I answer? Can I please ask?
Make a new short question then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we are like clear that smaller countries will agree to this policy, but how can we understand that bigger countries will also agree with this resolution? Thank you.
Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President. The development aid policy is a policy set up by the European Union. So it's up to the discretion of each state to give a certain sum of money depending on the wealth of that country to this pool. So all the money goes into a pool and then the European Union decides what happens with this money.
Thank you very much. Austria.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to refer to it seems like holy organization EEAS, which is mentioned 6 times. Could you explain why your committee hasn't almost any solutions and passes all ideas to the EEAS?
Malta.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't think that we can work in some other way. We have to decide what is our policy, okay? We have decided that we want to improve EEAS. We have decided that we want to make every state as a type of reminder, a type of body that can help every state in order to improve their foreign affairs policy and in order to have it as a type of reminder that can help them. So we have worked on the EEAS because we think that nowadays European Union needs a one voice, needs to work together, and we think that EEAS with every type of changes that we have done can be this type of organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 40, Slovak Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is concerning OC number 4. As I know, the EU isn't really a state, so how can the EU have an embassy and how should it work? So you said that you want to have 27 ambassadors. I don't get your point of this OC.
Lithuania.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think my colleague Ireland already answered that we already have up to 50 embassies in countries that we have relationship, like diplomatic relationship. And there's planned to be up to 150 embassies throughout the world. So it's already happening. We're not inventing something new.
Thank you. Number 4, Spain.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question concerns OC number 5. As we all know, the meetings of the European Council don't always come to agreements that are backed up by every single participant in the meetings. So if big and small countries have different interests, which ones will be taken into consideration to declare the common guidelines? The big countries ones? And doesn't that go against the main aim of the committee?
Malta.
Thank you, Mr. President. With this point of our resolution, we want to say that we need a global conference before a meeting before a global conference in order to put off what are the guidelines of our policy. So, if a really big state has another interest and really wants to go ahead with this interest, it can say it in the global conference, but it is, if it does it, it could go to the risk that I have to start again. Okay. So if a big state thinks that a particular policy or a particular decision of the meeting before the global conference is against his interest and doesn't want to let it, to leave it, he can go ahead. But we think that the Europe of the future is a Europe that works together. So a single state has to understand that if he's alone in this policy, he can't go ahead, he can't work. So we think that a global a meeting for a global conference can help every state to understand that they have to work together in order to remind that if a big state wants to go ahead alone, he will lose his popularity and so also lose the face of the other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 62, Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to make a compliment to this committee. I really agree with your resolution. I still have a question about OC4. I don't really get it because we already have a lot of embassies from every country of the EU. So when we are equal, like when we're politic equal, why do we need European embassies? Because when you make European embassies, you need all 27 ambassadors, and that won't be realistic. So I'm questioning, how do you want to do this? And I think you already have the answer of your question, so you don't need this. And I think we already have a solution for this.
Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President. The EU embassies are already set up. So basically, some smaller countries, for example, Bulgaria or, I don't know, Luxembourg, may not have the resources to have their own embassy. So EU embassies represent 27 countries. But there are not 27 ambassadors. There is one single EU ambassador, but there are 27 representatives who work in each embassy. And they work there and they work under this one EU ambassador. They are already set up and they spread the message of the EU and help the EU, and as well, they also allow the Foreign Service, which is the EEAS, to work faster and quicker in different countries throughout the world.
Thank you very much. Number 18, United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. President. It seems to me that the clauses in your resolution are very much steered towards this idea of a United States of Europe. I believe that can be summarized by in ICA recognizing the need for a single unified European voice, and potentially even in B, a notable first step towards a coherent European representation. The Euroscepticism currently present in member states is predominantly fueled by the fear of this idea, that their political sovereignty and thus national identity are being threatened. Thus, I believe that your resolution has the potential to aggravate union-wide Euroscepticism to the point at which strains may be put on the continued membership of the EU of individual member states. Would the committee not recognise this as a serious flaw in their resolution?
Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, I completely disagree with this, as the Foreign Service first of all, just deals with foreign policy. So it takes into consideration the bilateral and multilateral foreign policies of each individual country. It respects their foreign policy and respects their relationships with other countries, their interests, and everything involved with that country. Europe is a union that is based on a vision for the future, so we are not suggesting that everyone has the same hope, that everyone has the same ideas and the same opinion on things. We are saying that as a European Union, we all have a general voice and a voice that strives for a similar future.
Thank you very much. 112, Austria.
Thank you, Mr. President. Concerning OC number 7, how is the exchange of experience and knowledge of diplomats going to help small countries to have a voice?
The Netherlands.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, you have to look at it this way. At the moment, when I'm an ambassador from France or a diplomat from France, I have had a lot of experience because France is very well represented at the international stage, at the global stage. But when I'm a diplomat from, for example, Luxembourg or Malta or Bulgaria or any of the smaller member states, I just didn't have the opportunity to gain as much experience because these countries are, with all due respect, less present on the global stage. So the general idea is just exchange this experience, raise the bar, make all diplomats more informed, and such increase. And when a smaller country is better informed about situations, they can also make a better impact in meetings and such.
Number 7, take Estonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to draw the attention of the Presidency to the operative clause number 5. Since the committee is apparently not capable to find a valid solution for its given tasks and commits most of its goals to the EU Council and Commission, which proves that EEAS is unsuccessful. Thank you.
EEAS is unsuccessful. The Netherlands.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just point out that the EEAS is only present in an advisory role at these meetings. So they just give an advice as the Foreign Service. They try to make clear what's the best way to act, but they don't have the power to make new policy. That's the European Commission's job, and also more or less the job of the European Council. So it's not like the EES doesn't work or something. It's like the EES is there in an advisory role for a reason. It's because we already have the Commission and we already have the Council to make such decisions. I'm sorry.
86, France.
Thank you, Mr. President. About the Appendix 5 of Clause number 6, please stop me if I'm wrong, but we have 27 countries in the EU, which means that on a basis of 4 years, a member state will have one opportunity per century to get a specific role. Don't you think it's quite a long time to wait?
Estonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, we don't think that's a long time because all the other countries need to wait too. Thank you.
'57, Czech Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again on clause 6, the rotation system, it's on a basic of 4 years. But the first year, they will get used to the job, and the last year, they will start focusing on the next rotation. So, oh, sorry.
Can you rephrase the question? Come to the point.
I think the rotation system is just not efficient, because the first year, they will try to get used to the job, so they won't work really efficient. And the last year, they will have to start focusing on the next rotation. So 2 out of 4 years, they don't work really efficient.
Is that Luxembourg?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is why we're doing it on a 4-year basis. So after 4 years, we can see if it's efficient or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 104, Belgium.
Thank you, Mr. President. What do you want to reach with OC 8 and 9? Because I don't see any solution in it.
Belgium doesn't see the solution. Spain.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is actually a solution. We are solving the problem of the representation of the smallest states. If they get more involved with the aid policy, the image that all the countries of the world have of them will improve, and they will become like more estimated. Thank you.
25, Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I see in the resolution is that you have give the objectives, but you don't tell anywhere the solution. What are you going to do for get succeed in this objection? It's such a difficult subject, this one, because the most powerful countries in the EU are not going to say no to their power. And here I don't see any measure to change this solution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President. We fully understand that we cannot take away power from larger states. That's clearly not a feasible option. Our problem that we were faced with was how can we safeguard the interests of the smaller states. So the bigger states themselves are represented by themselves on a larger scale on a global scale in conferences such as the G8 and the G20. We do not have the power as a foreign service to instruct a larger state what to do with their vote or what to do with their power. And you mentioned that we haven't reached a solution, but we have completely addressed the question. It's how you said all we do is protect, I think, and our question was how can we protect smaller states? So we have protected them by by enhancing and reforming the foreign service that already exists.
Thank you very much. Number 31, Poland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question about number 4. How much would the embassy cost and who would gonna pay for keeping them alive?
Please be silent. Please.
How much the embassy would cost and who is going to pay for keeping them going on?
Who wants to answer this question? Bulgaria.
Okay, I just want to point out that there is a rule in the Model European Parliament that we have unlimited budget. Okay?
That is absolutely
correct.
Correct. Former Yugoslavian Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Here, OC9, it says, expresses its sincere hope that more member states will be more involved in the U.S. foreign diplomat aid policy. But actually it doesn't say how the committee will help these smaller member states. So I think hoping is not enough.
How are you helping? The Netherlands.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's not the job of the European Union to force smaller member states to actively participate in foreign aid. We can give them the means. We can make sure the foreign aid is better suited to them, which will happen in the EES. But from then on, we can only say, well, they have to take the last step. We made all the preparations. And now we can't force them. We can only express our sincere hope that they will get more involved.
Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is about OC number 7. So, what makes you think that sharing the experiences will raise the European standards, because this can stand in the way of development and development of new ideas?
Lithuania.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this question was already raised, and I can repeat that smaller member states will get an opportunity to become equal to the bigger member states in terms of diplomacy, in terms of knowing defense, in terms of knowing other situations that they have to work at.
Number 39, Slovak Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question refers to the 6th OC again. There you are talking about this rotation system, and you just said that the departments would change every 4 years. But in fact, this would be very expensive, and I don't see a sense in this, because it wouldn't change nothing on the fact that the small member states have such small role in the foreign policy. The country would only host the department and wouldn't get more power. So why do you want to implement it?
Spending money doesn't implement. France.
Thank you, Mr. President. Basically, with this rotation system, every member state will have the chance to choose the departments in which they want to work. So that includes the smaller member states, and they will have equal role in this within the EEAS.
111, Austria.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question concerning OC number 8. Where is the connection to smaller countries in this OC?
Luxembourg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think you all know that Luxembourg, for example, is quite a rich country. So, for example, Luxembourg would be able to give a lot of money into that project, and a small country like Luxembourg would also be regarded more in the foreign service.
98, Germany.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you said, you want to protect a role of the smaller countries, but as far as I know, the foreign affairs are still handled by the Council of Foreign Affairs, and basically they decide what to do. So I don't see the point in giving all this power to the EEAS, because as you stated yourself, it is just for coordinating the actions of the European Union, and it has an advisory role. So, but if I'm advising someone, I in particular don't have any power, so it doesn't change anything.
The Netherlands.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to point out that it's not our job to reform the entire EU. That would be impractical, it would be impossible, and it would be it wouldn't be worth it, because we already given this job of the foreign services to the European Council, which has a much more equal voting system actually, because there are 27 ministers instead of all the commissioners, and the voting system is actually bigger countries do have a larger vote, but it's way more equal to the smaller member states than in, for example, the Commission. Also, it's true that the EES only has an advisory role, but it's again because we don't want to mess with the constitutional affairs. We don't want to change the constitution of the European Union. But the EES is actually quite an important and large service. So when they give an advice, you can actually pretty count on it that it will be taken in account, you know?
119, Cyprus.
Thank you, Mr. President. Firstly, I want to express my dissatisfaction for the discriminative comments from the delegate of Malta on how smaller countries cannot go ahead if they are alone. And secondly, this resolution has pretty much good clauses, But how is the question really answered? I mean, how do smaller states such as Cyprus and Malta actually safeguard their interests? What is the problem with the question?
Can you please rephrase the question? Come to the question.
Okay. This resolution has good clauses, but how is the question really answered? I mean, how do smaller states actually safeguard their interests?
How do smaller countries safeguard their interests? Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President. The term interests refers in the Foreign Service to their interest in development aid, their interest in trade, their interest in defence. I believe that our committee has touched on all of these aspects if you read through the OCs. We have dealt with everything. You cannot just give power to smaller states because it is simply not a feasible idea. Our committee aims to support them, aims to give them a bigger role on the stage that the European Union provides. So I believe that we have in fact answered the question, as we have put in provisions for the future, and we look to their future, and we have safeguarded them, and we have put in policies, and we have implemented actions that will take care of their future role.
Thank you. Number 20, United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. You suggested that we massively improve the influence of the EEAS, but by basing your entire almost your entire policy in which each state has an equal vote, you are proposing a destruction of sort of a fundamental proportional representation. The European Union and European Parliament already provides each member state with a voice and a vote, but does the committee seriously suggest that a country with a population of under 1 million and without an army should have the same influence in foreign policy as one with over 50 million?
Malta.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are talking about working together, and we are talking about find together a solution. So, to find together a solution. We are not saying, we haven't said that everyone has the same knowledge and has the same past in order to speak about the future and speak about what we are going to do. We know that some states are bigger and some states have more knowledge than some others that are smaller. But we think that for the future we need the cooperation of every state. So we think that we have to avoid that some states can speak only because they are smaller than other ones. So we want to give them the possibility to speak. But remembering that some states have a past, have a knowledge, have more responsibility, and so yes, it's true that some states has a bigger voice, but having a bigger voice doesn't mean that the lowest voices don't have to be listened to. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 43, Lithuania.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to sincerely thank the committee for the fact that the voice of the small countries is equally heard. But I still have a small question about OC4. Is it true that the EU embassies, will they replace the national embassies of the member states? And if that's true, then wouldn't that create a jurisdictional problem, because the national embassies are considered national territory at the moment?
Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, the EU embassies will not replace the national embassies. Now that's clear.
113, Belgium.
Thank you, Mr. President. Why do you give the authority to the EEAS to advise legislations for all European foreign policies when the European Commission is the only institution with the power to propose new legislations and the EEAS is a non-governmental organization?
the Netherlands.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I can assure you that the EEAS is a governmental association. It's the European External Action Force. It is led by Catherine Ashton, so it's a governmental organization. It's led by it's an European institution, actually. To answer your other remark, it's still only in an advisory role. So they sit with the meetings of the European Council, and we chose the European Council and not the European Commission for a reason, which I mentioned before. The European Council has a more equal voting system, so smaller countries will be represented in a more fair way, you know. And also the European Council is represented by the foreign ministers, the ministers of foreign affairs. So they will be the persons who are at that moment most capable of discussing such meetings, such issues.
Thank you very much. Last three questions. Number 41, Lithuania.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question about OC5. You proclaimed the establishment of the meeting of the European Council before attending global conferences. Nowadays, the European Union is searching method how to decrease a big number of meetings because everybody knows that meeting consists.
Can you please just
I have to repeat everything? Okay. OC5. You proclaimed the establishment of the meeting of the European Council before attending global conferences. Nowadays, European Union is searching a method how to decrease a big number of meetings because it costs a lot of money and make damages for nature. For example, so many flights increase CO2 emissions. And what you can say to committee responsible for environmental protection? Thank you.
Lithuania.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, as you see on our resolution, we are Committee on Foreign Affairs, not industry and not research and not nature. So, like, we'll have those meetings at the same time as European Council has its own meetings. So it will be combined that it would happen at the same time and to save nature, our mother nature, as much as possible.
Thank you. 34, Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the OC number 9, you hope that smaller member states will be more involved in the U.S. foreign development aid policy, but how will you achieve it? How will you encourage it? Thank you, Mr. President.
Spain.
Thank you, Mr. President. How we will encourage them to participate? Well, we are trying to safeguard their interests, so they will be interested in anything that helps the image the other countries of the world have of them to improve. So they would like to get more involved in order to be more heard, more estimated. And maybe they don't have too much money to put, but they can get involved in administration duties, so all the countries can participate. Thank you, Mr. President.
And the last question goes to Finland, 85.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to ask, how is it possible to have a united foreign policy with independent states? I mean, are you strongly implying that the EU should move into being a federation?
Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's a very big difference between the EU's foreign policy and an individual state's foreign policy. The EU's foreign policy is about how the EU will react to an international crisis. It takes into consideration the individual foreign policies of individual states, but it, of course, is a democratical system. So it goes with the consensus and it goes with the majority vote of what each state votes for. So I don't know if you were implying that it was going to become a federation. It couldn't possibly, because it does not have an army and other factors like that. It is a union, it is not one large country.
Thank you very much. Who from the General Assembly would like to give the speech against the resolution? United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. President. The question posed was, how can the interests of smaller countries be safeguarded? This resolution goes about doing so by making the diplomatic influence in foreign affairs of smaller countries equal to that of larger states, as has been repetitively said by the committee. I believe that this is fundamentally the wrong way of going about solving the problem. The influence of member states has traditionally been reliant on their economic and military power. This makes great sense. It's very, very logical. If one state is on the international stage has more influence, then surely within Europe as well they should have more influence. The committee has told us that the power and influence of larger states will not be reduced. However, I cannot see a way in which they can increase the influence of smaller member states relative to member states as a whole without reducing the influence of larger member states. Maybe I'm being silly, but I really don't think I am. I don't think there is a way of doing so. So this obviously really goes against the logic of larger states holding more power and not being equal to that of smaller states. Thus, I do not think that fundamentally this is the correct way of going about solving the problem, so the resolution is flawed. I believe there will be many other ways in which they can safeguard the interests of smaller countries without doing this, which could lead to increases, as I previously said, in discussion of Euroscepticism. So I've strongly urged the Assembly to vote against this resolution. Thank you very much.
Who from the committee may I call to give the speech in favour of the resolution? The Netherlands.
Excellencies, Honourable Presidency, fellow delegates, committee presidents, and distinguished guests. If I could just respond to the United Kingdom, who is notably concerned about our ideas, their power won't decrease, I can assure you, because the European Council will still have the last say, and the European Commission needs to issue the law. And in the European Council and the European Commission, the power of the United Kingdom, for example, will stay exactly the same. It won't change anything about that. You will have the exact, your vote will remain the same, your power will remain the same. The only thing we do is that we get the smaller member states more involved so they can get their voice out there in the international community. If I can give an example, Piet Hein Donner, the Dutch Minister of Foreign Affairs, once said in an interview that there is one main reason why the European Union is such a great concept. The reason? The European Union makes things possible that were once impossible. Because the European Union manages to do things that individual member states can't achieve themselves. And actually that's what our resolution is all about. Because it has been our goal from the start to make sure that the European Union represents each member state on an international level, and especially those that are currently unable to sufficiently represent themselves on the global stage. Countries like Malta, Luxembourg, Belgium, but also the Netherlands will see that their opinion is heard in the international community. But not only small countries are aided by this, they're not the only ones to see their voice strengthened actually, because countries like Germany and France and the United Kingdom who are already represented sufficiently on the global stage, which is something we respect and we will absolutely keep it that way, but they will also have a relatively big say in the making of the EU's foreign policy. like, because in the European Council they have like a quite of a large voice. So when the European Union has one voice and better represents all the member states, Germany and France and the United Kingdom will also see their international impact increase. So we can even, well, I'm not going to say compete, but we can also, yeah, well, I'm going to say compete with the United States and China, for example. So every member state has their power increased. And this resolution embodies everything the European Union stands for: unity, justice, equality. I can only invite you to vote in favor of our resolution, and in doing so, strengthening the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We shall go on with voting. As this is the last resolution of the day, this shall be the last vote of the day. 15. With 67 votes in favor, 53 votes against, 13 abstentions, with the approval of the candidate countries and with the approval of the committee presidents, this resolution has passed.